Good afternoon. We will start the Finance Committee for November 19, 2024. Can we take roll call?
Yes, Committee Member Harmon is not present. And then Vice Chair Friedman.
Here.
Chair Gutierrez.
Here. We will move on for the first agenda item. Oh, public comment.
Chair Gutierrez, no hands are raised.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Gutierrez and Committee Member Friedman. I am Laura Doubles, and I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager for the city. With me here today is Mr. Rob Fredericks, the Executive Director from the city's Housing Authority, as well as Mr. Del Azam, who is the Deputy Executive Director there. Thank you for having us here today to present to you a request for a housing rehabilitation grant in the amount of $430,000 to be assisting a Santa Barbara Green Mobile Home Park. The mobile home park is located at 1200 Punta Gorda Street. Here on the right is a picture of the park, and on the left is a map with the location of the park in the city. The park is approximately 1.5 acres, has 41 spaces with mobile homes restricted to low-income households, plus a park manager's home office. This park is actually owned by the Housing Authority's instrumentality known as the Second Story Associates Mobile Homes, LLC, and that is who the grant would be going to. The funding will be for infrastructure replacement of both their water and sewer lines throughout the property. And the Housing Authority has committed to cover any project costs that may exceed this request before you today, as well as using the mobile home park's capital cash reserves. The estimated cost of the project totaled $470,400. And there's a breakdown here of how much it would be for the sewer line and water line replacements. The proposal for you before you today is for $430,000, so that leaves a difference of a little over $40,000, and that would be covered by both the mobile home park reserves as well as whatever difference the Housing Authority needs to come in with. So you probably do remember back in May 2022, City and Housing Authority staff worked very diligently to transfer this property from the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development over to the Housing Authority due to a financial default of the previous owner. The HCD was in process with foreclosure, and that could have resulted in a significant loss of this affordable housing in our community. So the city stepped in and actually paid a $75,000 good faith payment to HCD that was applied to the loan in order to ensure that we really wanted to secure this affordable housing in our community. Next slide, please. So because of that financial default, there was substantial amounts of deferred maintenance, which was causing a lot of health and safety issues for both the residents and for the surrounding neighborhood. The park's utilities infrastructure is way past its useful life and had frequent failures and required continual repairs. So I have to commend the Housing Authority. They've already had quite significant progress to date since they've gotten the acquisition of this property. They actually demolished and replaced the very unsafe on-site manager's house office with a new manufactured home. And they also gained a state-sponsored program award that actually replaced all the electrical and natural gas lines throughout the park. However, there is additional work that's needed. We do need to replace the water and sewer infrastructure to ensure adequate, safe, and sustainable utility provision, and that's what this is, the proposed project is. After that is completed, they will need to do asphalt paving throughout the park. So our CDBG HRLP program does not require affordability covenants to be recorded on the properties. However, when we transferred this property back in 2022, we actually did place a 90-year city affordability covenant on the property. It was recorded and it expires out in 2112. So we definitely are ensuring that property will remain affordable for many, many years still. And in summary, this project will extend the useful life of the property, and will ensure the provision of the affordable housing to our community. And it also will help us to meet the federal grant expenditure timeliness requirements that HUD places on us for the use of federal CDBG funding. Next slide, please. So with that, this brings us to our staff recommendation. And if the committee approves of this request today, then we will be taking this item over to council this afternoon for their full review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're here for any questions.
Do we have any questions? No? And we have one public comment, Dale Asam.
Dale Azam with the Housing Authority. Ms. Doubles did a terrific job of summarizing that. And so she said most of what I was going to mention. I just want to say that this has been a true collaboration between the Housing Authority, the city, and with the state HCD. We were able to restructure the loan a couple of years ago and save this as a low-income ownership resource for the community. There's not too many of those. And so it's been a lot of work. We've been a learning curve. This is our first mobile home park. But we're making progress, as Ms. Doubles said. And thank you very much for your consideration today.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments online?
Chair Gutierrez, no hands are raised.
Any comments from the committee? Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you. First, just thank you to our staff for the presentation and the work you've done on it, and to our partners at the Housing Authority, Mr. Fredericks, Mr. Azam, and everyone. This is a much-needed project, and part of it is we need to have the proper infrastructure to ensure that they have the water, trash, sewer, all that stuff. And so with the electrical that you already did, now the water and the sewer, which are extremely important, happy to support this and bring everything up to where it needs to be for all the residents that live there. And it's just a great example. I didn't realize it was ownership, low-income ownership, so that's an important aspect of this as well. So happy to support this.
Ms. Horan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I first apologize for being late. And second, would just echo everything that Councilmember Friedman said. This is a very worthy effort, and we'll be very happy to vote to move it forward today. So I think, Councilmember Friedman, you made a motion? Or?
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited about today because I was actually on that last meeting, really close to the deadline, helping some of the property owners understand of the transfer of ownership. And it was, I live 2.5 blocks away from that mobile home park. I've had friends growing up that lived there, so I understood how bad the conditions were. And the residents there were under a lot of stress. There was a lot of unknowing if they were going to leave. And to see how the city and the Housing Authority jumped on and partnered, and I got pulled in. It was my district. I was bilingual, and the people in the mobile home park understood, and they trust that partnership. And so thank you, Mr. Fredericks, for having such an organization that is very trusting, and that you actually did what you promised, and they've seen the remodels, and so I personally know people that live there. So thank you again. And for me, it's such an honor to see these developments actually, come full circle. So it's we have a motion on the table in a second.
Yes, we do. So we'll do a roll call. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Friedman,
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Yay. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Gutierrez and committee members. My name is Dakota Corey, and I'm the Water Supply and Services Manager for the city. And I have a brief presentation for you today. We are looking for a recommendation to make an update to the rate and fee schedule for the city. So first, I just want to give a little bit of background on the program that these rates and fees support. Our sewer lateral inspection program supports private homeowners. So to contextualize that, the city owns 273 miles of mains that make up our wastewater collection system. So that's the city-owned and maintained portion of the system. But then there's approximately 25,000 privately owned connections that connect people's homes to our publicly owned system. And we call those sewer laterals. And most of those sewer laterals have reached the end of their useful life and are in poor condition. Our city is old, and many of these houses were built quite a while ago, so they're just beyond their useful life. And so when we have blockages or backups, it can result in spills, and the private sewer lateral side of the system is the leading cause of those spills in the city. And it can pose a threat to both public health and the environment. So we have our SLIP program, which is our sewer lateral inspection program, and it offers free education and support to property owners who need help maintaining or repairing their private sewer laterals. And we've been operating this program for quite some time in the city. It can be pretty troubling to a homeowner to get the news that they need to replace their sewer lateral. It's expensive. It's not something that people generally have on their radar. And so the SLIP program is really set up to help assist them get through that process so that we can keep our sewer laterals in good shape and our wastewater collection system in good shape. One of the things that we found was that when homeowners went out to get a quote to have these repairs made, there was a wide variety of costs that they would get from various plumbers. And so one thing that we've done to try to help support the community is we've developed a contract where they can contract through our city-owned contract to get the work done, and it's set fees. And because we have economy of scale, we have lower prices than what they might be able to get out if they go and contract themselves. And so the contract that contract is what drives this needed change in the rate and fee study. So this is the contract. This is the second time that we've had it. So the previous contract expired on September 27th, 2024. And we went out on a competitive bid process, RFP, and got a new contractor. That bid closed on September 17th, 2024. And so then these fees are posted in our rate and fee schedule, which is adopted by council. So what we need to do now is update that schedule so that it aligns with our new prices in the new contract. And the good news is almost all of the fees went down. So it was a favorable bidding for us in the city. And so the next couple of slides just describe some of those fees. One is option one, what we call an option one, which is our standard sewer lateral connection installation or replacement. And you can see, depending on the diameter of the sewer lateral, the fees reduced between $700 and $1,000. And for our option twos, which is a complete sewer lateral connection installation or replacement, we also saw a reduction in fees, again, depending on the diameter of the sewer lateral. Those reduced between $400 and $1,200. There's some other fees in the rate and fee schedule related to these projects, and so they're listed here by bullet. Just to bring your attention to bullet number 2, the digging connections deeper than 8 feet deep. This is the one fee in the contract that has increased, and what that fee is there's kind of a standard project where you assume that they're going to find the lateral connection at 8 feet or less. If they have to dig deeper than that, then there's an extra fee for every 4 feet that they dig. And so you can see that that increased from $1,666 per 4 feet to $3,000 per 4 feet. Now that doesn't happen with every customer that has to replace their lateral. So this is, you know, in the rare case that they need to dig deeper, this is the one fee that's increased, and all the rest of them have decreased. So we are hoping to recommend that the Finance Committee recommends to City Council to adopt the change to the rate and fee schedule to support this program.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one follow-up on that one increase and recognizing, of course, that everything else has gone down, which is awesome. I'm just curious why, I mean, it's a big jump from 1 to 3,000. And I would have expected to see higher prices where there might be some materials required, but this is just digging. So what, can you explain why that just went up so much?
So this is a completely new contractor than we had last time. And so I think what happened is the way they structured their fee schedule, they really put the cost into your standard dig, and then this one is an exception, and so that's where some of the costs got higher. I also have Galen Fair here, who's our water quality superintendent and oversees the program. I can bring her up and see if she has additional details for me.
Yeah, I guess my sort of overarching question is I'm wondering, this seems like mostly a cost savings, but are most people going to have it be zeroed out? Because I know you said it's rare to go a lot more feet, but is everyone going to be paying that $3,000 extra? I mean, and so it all comes out in the wash, or is that a very rare case? And is there any way for people to know?
Excellent question. If you go back to the slide that has that one, excuse me. So it's actually a net increase if there's that additional 4-foot excavation by, I can't do the math off the
Whatever
top
that
of my
is.
head there.
Yeah.
Probably about 1,500.
Okay.
And the reason for that is you're going significantly deeper. So you're going to need more shoring, you need more safety precautions. In the, I want to say the last 3 years of the previous contract, we had 12. So there's not too many people that are that deep.
Out of how many, do you know?
I'm sorry?
Out of how many?
Oh,
Ballpark is,
I would say option 2 is 60,
okay.
about 60. So not a ton. But these are also the option that property owners can choose if they want. We call it our white glove service. So they can choose to use the city's contractor to do the full excavation. They utilize the city staff to work with the contractor to do the excavation, mark where the lateral is out in the street. And so they really don't have to do anything. They're paying that additional, the $8,500 versus hiring a plumber. The plumber digs the pit, then we jump in and our city contractor jumps in and does the Y connection for that $1,100. So 2 very different types of contract choices that the property owner has. So because it's that more of a full service, the contractor just charges more, and again, it's the safety ensuring aspect of it.
And the homeowner will know in advance whether that extra fee is going to be applicable because you'll be able.
There's a little bit of timing that goes into it so they can elect for it. We always tell them if there is this potential for it. And then city staff, what we do is we work with our collections crew. They go out to mark the sewer main, go stick a camera in the sewer main, pour dye into the property owner's lateral, and then you can see this is where it is,
So then
mark
you'll
it
know
out
at
in the
that point.
street, and they locate it, and they know at that point. So at that point, when we say there's the additional at 3,000, which it will be at now, property owner could potentially choose to say, no, I'm not going to do it with you guys. I will elect to get quotes with my own plumber. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Do we have any public comments online?
Chair Gutierrez, no hands are raised.
Thank you. And do I have a motion? Ms. Harmon?
Thank you. I'll just say I continue to think this is a really awesome service that we provide. I mean, it just is expensive. That just is what it is. But I think it's a really, really wonderful thing, and I hope we continue to share with folks about it, because it's, I mean, having to manage a project like this is just a lot. So that the city does it, and I mean, it really, I remember when this came into being, and I really think this is just such good customer service. So really appreciate it, and I would be happy to move staff recommendation.
Councilmember Friedman?
Thank you. I concur. Thank you for the work on this, and it is exciting anytime we can reduce fees. We are on the opposite end usually most of the time, but this is one where on the property owner, it can be quite expensive when you're replacing these. So to have these fees reduced, it helps a lot, especially a lot of the homes are older and people might be on fixed incomes. So this is very helpful, and glad to support it. And I hope we can publicize that these fees have gone down, because I think people would want to hear something like that in times when all they hear is fees are going up. So I think it's important. And the environmental benefits as well. So hopefully with reduced costs, we'll encourage more people to come forward earlier. So happy to second the motion.
Take roll call, please.
Yes, motion made by Committee Member Harmon, seconded by Vice Chair Gutierrez. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Friedman. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon.
Yes.
Vice Chair Friedman.
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 3.
Okay, we're on to agenda item number 3. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Keith DeMartini. I'm the finance director for the city. I'm here with Ms. Natalie Licoli, the city's controller. And it is our pleasure to present an overview of the first quarter financial review for fiscal year 2025. So there's 4 items before you today. First is just to receive a report on the status of revenues and expenditures collected thus far this fiscal year, accept the interim financial statements for the first 3 months ending September 30th, 2024. Recommend that council adopt a resolution, basically approving of the first quarter budget adjustments. These are standard sort of budget adjustments that come before you every quarter. And then the 4th recommendation is to recommend that council adopt a resolution to approve of a couple position changes in a couple departments. So the agenda for today is to first give an overview of the general fund, then we'll talk about the enterprise funds. We'll talk about those proposed budget adjustments, the 2 position changes, and then take question, public comment, and discussion. So first, let's talk about the general fund. I'm going to start with a very, very high-level overview. This graph may be familiar to you. This is our general fund long-range financial forecast. And what it does is we project out revenues and expenditures in the general fund, not just in the current fiscal year or the upcoming budget year, but we really try and go out further to really understand what are some of our major budget challenges, potential deficits that we need to address through budget actions. And this is a graph that I've shown to this committee on a number of occasions. One thing we did fairly recently was adopt a revenue and cost recovery policy that will help to ensure optimal cost recovery for our fees. We just had a really great presentation right before us, making sure that we're assessing the correct level of fee, even if it's lower, so that policy is in effect and working. But most recently, with the passage of Measure I, the sales tax measure that the voters approved back on November 5th, we now have an additional revenue coming into the general fund. And so this graph is pre-Measure I implementation, and this graph that I'm showing here now is post-Measure I. It should say post-Measure I on the very top. So this graph assumes the implementation of the Measure I additional transactions and use tax. And in fiscal year 2025, we're assuming approximately $3 million will come in. That new tax rate of 9.25% will take effect on April 1st, 2025. So that represents just 3 months of the new tax rate being in effect. And it often does take some businesses a little bit of time to ensure that they're implementing the correct sales tax rate correctly. And so the first full year of implementation will occur in fiscal year 2026. And so as you can see on this graph, the revenue and expense line are pretty much right on top of each other, which indicates being able to balance our budget much more effectively going forward. So let's talk about these 2 pie charts, where our revenues come from and where our expenditures go. You can see that the pie chart on the left is very very diverse, equal share of our revenues coming into the general fund, coming from property tax, sales and use tax, Measure C sales tax, TOT, as well as some other taxes as well. And the vast majority of our general fund revenues go to pay for salaries and benefits of our employees, primarily in the public safety function of police and fire. This table here shows an overview of the adopted budget, the revised budget, and the actuals that have come in to date for both the general fund and also for Measure C. We do report on Measure C sort of separately, although it is a district sales tax measure. It's all part of the city's general fund. And as you can see, the adopted budget called for just over a $4 million deficit in fiscal year 2025. It is very common that you'll see the revised budget have additional expenditures in them, and this is primarily due to carry forward appropriation of commitments that have been made from the prior fiscal year, where not all of that money has been spent. And so this is something that we've been talking about the last couple of years. There's far fewer carryovers into fiscal year 25, which is a really good sign. We've been able to make a lot of great progress on a lot of those key priority projects. These numbers also do reflect the additional revenue, just about $3 million more, as you can see, from the adopted budget versus revised budget, again, for the Measure I implementation. On Measure C, you'll see that we do have a deficit in Measure C. This was known during the adopted budget, and this was primarily due to the Measure C fund taking on the funding responsibility for a number of downtown parking capital projects because of the deficit that enterprise fund is experiencing. That was an action taken during budget adoption. So this table here goes into a little bit of detail about the major general fund revenue sources. Again, you can see that we're not changing our revised budget at this time. Again, we typically will do a really robust projection of where we think we're going to end up at the end of the fiscal year at the 6-month mark. So when we come to you with a Q2 report, we'll have 6 months of actual data. We'll be in a much better position to project where we think we will end up. The only change here again is showing a new line for the Measure I sales tax at $3 million in fiscal year 2025. It's very common to show no revenue coming in for property tax yet. We don't get our first distribution until December from the county. Same thing with business tax certificates. The renewal period starts in January, so the vast majority of that will come in January. So this is very common to see at this point in time. And this is just a graphical representation of the prior table that I just presented. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Licoli.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. Good afternoon, Chair Gutierrez and committee members. The short-term rental at Q1, $487,000 was collected, or about 82.5% of the total for fiscal year 24. $97,000 will be reallocated to Measure B for creek restoration and water quality improvement. The general fund expenditure. So this slide is a presentation of our general fund expenditure for adopted revised budget as well as the result for Q1. The variances between the adopted and revised budget are due to expenditure that are carried over or encumbered at the end of fiscal year 24 and for which the amount are rolled over to this new fiscal year after adopted budget was approved. Some of these encumbrance as well as new transactions are on hold at the end of the fiscal year and the end of the first quarter under the column encumbrance. We show on this table percentage used without and with encumbrance in comparison to revised budget. General government is 20% of revised budget. It's a similar trend as last year for the same period. Public safety is at 24% of budget. In comparison to fiscal year 24, there is an increase of about $2.3 million that relate to payroll expenses. Vacation positions are mostly filled. Policy department incurs some overtime due to the 4th of July and the fiesta activities. Public safety, being the larger department within the general fund, project to stay within the revised budget. Park and recreation. Park and recreation is following a normal trend and project to finish the year within the revised budget. The library is slightly below budget at 20%. the east side finally reopened their door in October after extensive repair due to recent storm. Projection is still set to use all the revised budget for fiscal year 25. Public Work has expenditure of $3 million, using 21% of its revised budget. Many of the vacancy in engineering services were filled by the end of Q1, and we should have 90% of cost recovery target for those services. Sustainability and resilience currently has 2 special projects. They have the emergency remediation project at Chapala, Carillo, and the Lot 12 environmental remediation. 13% of the budget has been used so far. There is no change in targeted result for the year with revised budget. Community development expenditure are comparable to last year for the same period. Only 19% of the budget has been used so far, mainly due to vacancy. So at the end for this year, for this end of the first quarter, general fund expenditure is $52.4 million, or 25% of revised budget. In comparison to fiscal year 24, there's only a slight increase of about $500,000. When including the encumbrance, we are right on target with a revised budget of 25%. So this slide represents in graph the last 2 tables we discussed with adopted budget to your left, revised budget in blue, and the first quarter actual result to the far right. So now we're going to look into the enterprise fund. First, I'm going to discuss the water department. The water department is on track for its revenue, but $2.1 million higher than Q1 for fiscal year 24 for its expenses. Despite the vacancy in payroll, the spike in expense is related to capital outlay transfer due to the construction costs that increased significantly in the last years. The net operation result is a positive $1.9 million for this first quarter. Wastewater revenue has a similar activity as last year for the same period. Expense is 19% of budget was used for Q1, but this result will change when debt payment will take place later in the year. At this point, the result is $1.5 million surplus in revenue. Solid waste showed the same trend as last year. Solid waste came with a positive result of $2.2 million in comparison to a forecasted loss for $300,000. Next, we have the clean energy. The clean energy has a loss of $2 million at the end of this quarter, mainly driven by an increase in expense for $9.3 million. This is caused by the costs related to renewable energy certificate. Those expenses cannot be determined until the green energy is delivered to us and can fluctuate month to month. Despite this challenging start, clean energy come for this period at better operational result than the revised budget. The airport. This last summer, for the airport was marked by a new historical record in passenger count. They have 137,000 passengers for the month of July, a 21.3% increase with July 23. Revenue is $8.3 million and is expected to stay strong. And at the end of the quarter, we have a positive operational result for $800,000. The waterfront is currently again some strong wind, with a decrease in lease revenue for large food service tenants that are under renovation, an economy that is flattering, an unpredictable weather forecast. It slightly maintained at Q1 its revenue with prior year. Expenses are within the trend, and the final result for Q1 is an additional reserve for about $600,000. The downtown parking. The downtown parking revenue are at $2.8 million, 18% of budget. The hourly parking revenue came in under budget at 15%. The department is working on strategy to increase this line item and decrease expenses by slowing down the transfer for capital outlay and bringing janitorial services in-house to cut some of the labor cost. The fiscal year 25 adopted budget called for a transfer of $500,000 from the general fund if the downtown parking is unable to generate adequate revenue to cover operating and capital expenditure. And finally, the golf. The golf for the quarter one for this new fiscal year mirror the same period as last year. Unless the weather impacts significantly the golf activity, the department planned to finish the year within the revised budget. At this point, there's an additional $500,000 that has been generated as a surplus. Now we will move to the proposed budget. So I have listed a few major transactions that will be requested under the general fund, special revenue fund, as well as the enterprise fund. I will take this opportunity to clarify the first one for the Measure C, for the $33.4 million revenue and the reclass of $37.3 million for the expenditure. The Measure C sales tax, the staff recommend a revised accounting treatment for revenue to be deposited directly into the Measure C fund and for the corresponding expenditure to take place directly from the same fund to simplify the process. And that's about it, what I have to say at this point for the budget. I'll pass it back to Mr. DeMartini.
Thank you so much. So there's just two position changes that are before you today, written in detail in the Finance Committee agenda report. First is for the Community Development Department. This is just a reclassification of a senior commission secretary position to an administrative assistant. And then in the Sustainability and Resilience Department, there's actually a deletion of one full-time administrative specialist. Neither of these actions are all that material from a financial or budgetary perspective, but it's important for the committee to receive this as we do have to have council adopt the changes to the salary and position control schedules. And that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for the committee? Yeah. Councilmember Friedman?
Thank you. If you could pull up slide 17.
Nope. That was weird.
I just wanted to understand the clean energy. So the adopted budget was a negative 2.2 for the year. We adopted, and then it was revised up to 5. Is that, and so after Q1, it's negative 2. So are we still on track for the negative 5?
Vice Chair Friedman, I think that is a fair assessment at this time. Staff will do a very robust projection of where we think we'll end up at the end of the fiscal year. At the Q2 report, as I mentioned earlier, these numbers are within sort of the ballpark of ending up with a small deficit, which was what they were projected to do at the very beginning of the year. Again, they have carry forward expenses like from energy related contracts that may have been multi-year. So a lot of those, that is probably the primary reason why the expenditure budget is sort of grown in the revised budget column.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was trying to understand with the two there. So I think we're pretty much on track with the revised is. Okay, and the same is true for the it was the next slide 18 was the downtown parking. Are those numbers where the 1.8 million and the 1.6 and the 0.3 for the Q1 are those inclusive of the $500,000 general fund transfer?
Yes, Vice Chair Friedman, that is included in the revenue line, the transfer from the general fund. And I will say that we will monitor their budget throughout the year at each of the quarterly reports before the Finance Committee. And staff will not recommend actually transferring general fund dollars unless it's necessary.
That's where I was going next. It's very close. If we transferred 500,000 in, it's only basically be 200,000 negative. So we haven't transferred. We actually haven't transferred it in yet. But
We
that's
have
just the
not.
county.
We will
Okay.
wait.
You beat me to my next question. So thank you. That was it.
I have a question on the proposed changes for positions. If I can have somebody answer the whys. So the question why? Why are we changing these positions? Why are we eliminating a position?
Good afternoon, Committee Member Gutierrez. I can't answer the question regarding sustainability and resilience, but in regards to community development, as Mr. DeMartini said, the financial impact of this change, I think, is costed out to be about $2,500. And what we're doing is we are changing a senior commission secretary position, which I believe this is the only one that exists within the city, to be an administrative assistant. And currently, in our administrative function in the department, we have administrative assistants that help building and safety. We have another administrative assistant who does kind of general HR liaison work and gives a little bit of help to Housing and Human Services. So we just wanted to create equity between the three positions and really create what we felt is a better operational approach to administration.
Thank you.
Hi, I can speak to the Sustainability and Resilience Department action. So we're a growing department, and for us, it was finding the right amount of administrative positions to help our department. We had one, this is getting a little technical, but we had one administrative assistant and then one administrative specialist, which is a slightly lower class. What we wanted to do was have two administrative assistants, and so at the time, HR advised to have basically create a new position, what we did in the last budget cycle, and once that's filled down the road, eliminate this vacant position. So it's really about finding kind of the right level for us, and we found it with kind of two assistants, and now we have this unneeded vacant position that we're moving to eliminate.
Thank you. And then, just out of curiosity, I know this is probably like a pain in the ass, but I'm really curious, this is for the police department, how is it? I get a lot of emails from the public, especially after Measure I passed, like, why are we spending so much money in fire and police? But I think this is a great opportunity to highlight. Mr. DeMartini mentioned how the police provides extra personnel during fiestas, especially this last fiestas and like 4th of July, but that department is still within budget. So if we can have somebody from the police department just give a little background and educate the public of how they're doing such a great job.
Good afternoon, Lori Peterson, the administrative manager at the police department. The ongoing savings from staffing and the overtime is that while we are getting closer to full staffing, we still have retirements and people leaving and resigning. So as that process fluxes and flows, we're constantly kind of adjusting that amount. So while we try our best to fill 100%, that's just not achievable.
Thank you. Okay. Any public comments online?
Chair Gutierrez, no hands are raised.
Okay. Any comments? No? A motion?
Appreciate all the work that staff went into this. This is the first quarter, so as you mentioned, the second quarter we'll have a little more robust discussion since we'll have more data on there. So with that, I will move the staff recommendations.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, motion made by Vice Chair Freeman, seconded by Committee Member Harmon. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon.
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman.
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much.